Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Skymaster F18 build series videos. If this is your first time finding the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Also, there's a link up above. I'll throw it on the screen here to the entire build series for this plane. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. All right, guys, in the final video for this build series, we are just wrapping up details. So we've got the leading edge to do on the one wing we've already completed. Then we've got the other entire wing to do. We're going to be putting the ordnance on the plane, doing the final touches, installing pilots, things like that. So there's going to be a lot of just kind of miscellaneous wrap-up stuff, going through checks and balances and things like that. So without further ado, let's hop in. All right, guys, so this is the left wing that we got done previously. We had not finished the leading edge, which I've since hooked up. So basically what I did was when we did our parts order, we were waiting on that servo horn because we needed a really short servo horn. Anyways, we got it. So we've set this one up. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's the arm maxes out at the top of the servo, or the top of the servo cover, and then it maxes out for travel at the very bottom where it contacts with the top skin. So, but it's pretty straightforward. This is all set up in the flap menu because this is flap number 2. So basically we can set it at 0 at 0 flaps. We can add a little bit at mid flaps, and then we can add more at landing flaps. So pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to put the cover plate on that, and then we're going to put the ordnance on this wing as well too. I just want to get this wing 100% done for the video. I'm also going to put my connector on here to get everything set up so it can plug onto the aircraft. So we'll get this wing all done. I'll video this portion of the wing, then I'll do the other wing, but I'm not going to video any of the other wing because we're just matching what we did on this one. So. Alright guys, so mounting the ordnance is fairly straightforward. You can see the dowels that are already inserted by Skymaster. So what I do is I just mark the center of one of the dowels that have been glued in. I put a dot in the center of the other dowel, just a tiny little one. I lay the pylon on top of the wing, and then shine a flashlight underneath and just make sure that my pre-drilled holes are centered between the two dots. So once those are centered and I'm happy with them, I'm going to drill these out. Now what I'm using to mount the pylons is number 6 hex wood screws. Put a washer on these guys, use the appropriate washer, and works really well. So once we drill these holes, we're going to insert this into the wing, pull it back out, put some CA in there, and then we'll get the big pylon. There's a big and a little one on the this F18 model, the CD model. There's only 2 pylons. On the Hornet, there's 3. But we're going to get the big one mounted first, which goes in the middle here, and then the little one goes outside here. And now this big one's already pre-done for the drop tanks. And there's also a center pylon that goes underneath the fuselage right there, which accepts a drop tank as well too. Now we've only got 2 drop tanks, so we'll see how we're going to set this up. But anyways, guys, that's the first pylon to go on. All right, guys, first wing pylon's mounted, and fairly straightforward, nice and solid. Now, finding the hard points for the second pylon is a little bit more challenging on this wing because you can't see the outline. On this one, you could see the outline of the circle. So basically, the little trick for you is if you take a LED light, and hopefully the camera will pick this up, but there's the first hard point, there's the second hard point. So it helps you to see it. So this is exactly what I would do. So I'm just going to take this one because I can see it better and mark the circle, or mark the center. Okay. And then these things only really fit on one way. So if you look at the way the wing's designed, there's going to be a lot more flat movement, right, than there is leading edge movement. So, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. They don't go on that way. The mechanics of the pylon, I guess, if you want to call it that, go towards the front. So Anyways, guys, so this is how I do this. So I have the flashlight like that. Get this one lined up. Okay, and I haven't marked the front one yet, but then I would just lift the front and look through the hole and make sure that my other dot's lined up, and then drill the 2 holes. All right, guys, both pylons have been mounted and the drop tank has been fit in place. Now, these drop tanks, they came from the aircraft that went in previously, so they're actually all already a perfect fit. Like the screw holes and everything already line up. So that's just placed in place. That's just set in place right now, but looks absolutely awesome. So next thing to do is to mount the rails for the missiles or the different ordnance options. So these just screw into place. So fairly straightforward. They just use wood screws that screw into there, and then the missiles are keyholed. So, anyways, that's pretty simple. And then the one of the other things to do on these wings is to mount the wingtip mounts. So these should be fairly straightforward. I'm assuming there's a blind nut or something inserted in these holes. If not, then we'll just use wood screws. But what we need to do is we need to cut a little channel here for the pin holding the leading edge flaps on. So once that's in place, this will fit just perfectly. Now keep in mind there's two different sides, only because there's a darker and lighter color. So if you were to put this on the other side, the wrong color is going to be facing down. So just something to pay attention to. All right, guys, so no blind nuts in the wing, so we're just going to use wood screws. Screwed those in, treated the holes with CA, and then you can see the channel there that I installed for the wire on the wing. All right, and the wingtip missile fits on there no problem. Keyholes line up perfectly, and that's wingtip. All right, guys, and the middle pylon and missile are installed. That one was pretty easy. The holes on the rail actually line up with the holes that fasten the pylon to the wing. So all I did was move the pylon back 1/4 of an inch, drill 2 holes in the pylon to line up with the rail, and used wood screws to fasten those in. The keyholes I had to redo on the missile just to line up with the new missile rail, but. Wing is done as far as the ordnance goes. Last thing to do on this wing is to make the wiring harness. So I'll do that up quickly and I'll show you guys the final product. And then once that's done, we have to work on the other wing, which I haven't done a single thing on yet. So we still have a lot of work to do on that other wing as far as gluing stuff in and everything. But we've already done it once, so it should be fairly straightforward. But anyways, I'll show you the finished product with the wiring harness. All right, guys, the connector is all done here. So the way it's set up is basically this distance here is kind of fixed. It's just a nice solid piece. We plug the connector in, and as the wing goes together, this just tucks inside the wing. So I'll show you what that looks like. There we go. And that is it. So one wing is done. All right, guys, the wing's installed. Everything looks good. There's flaps off, mid flaps, and full flaps. All right, so just doing a little bit of fail-safe programming here with the JR28X. So basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that this canopy doesn't accidentally get switched open in flight. So with the gear up, the canopy will not operate. Okay, so with the gear down, the canopy now operates. So basically back towards us is open. And then forward is closed. All right, guys, so we got most of the other wing, which is on that side, the right wing, complete. We just have a little bit of wiring to do left, and some servo cover work, and some programming, obviously. The programming hasn't been finished yet, but I'm just doing the CofG right now, and I'll show you a couple tricks here. So I am using the Xicoy weight and balance meter. I just have the attachments for CofG, but I don't have the angle finders yet. But anyways, that's what we'll be using. Now, one of the things I like to do is, I'm kind of assuming most people do this, but I lay down masking tape to mark all my locations. So what we need is the rear wheel, the CofG point, the front wheel, and that allows us to have all of our measurements there. And now one of the things I like to use is this table. I actually got it from a store that was closing down, but it's all nice and rigid and right angles and all that stuff. So when I lay my tape down, I just follow these holes, and that puts my tape in a nice straight line. And then I can use my speed square, or my square, to mark the front axle, mark the CofG point, and for that I just have this homemade plumb bob, which is a used high-sol end with fishing line and some bendable wire. And so that allowed me to mark the CofG point and transfer it down there onto my square. And then the last thing I'll do is I will mark the center of the rear axle, which is pretty simple. Just like that. So that's the way the plane's sitting right now. Obviously, there's a lot of trail on the struts for the F-18, but you know, you're going to obviously have all the wings on, pretty much everything on, and their struts are going to be compressed before you measure this. So that's how we're sitting right now. I'm going to get the scales all set up. All right, guys. So first step in doing this, the scales have all been laid out. They are marked. So front, right, and left. Next thing we're doing is we are labeling the plane distance front to mains. So that's the center of the rear axle to the center of the front. Okay, so that distance on this plane, 958 millimeters. Now your measurements are key. That's why this needs to be very accurate, because your measurements are determining your CofG. So measure 10 times if you need to. Distance mains to CG, so that's the distance from the center of the main rear axle to the CG point. Okay, so that's 100, in our case 194 millimeters. Now the one that doesn't really matter so much is the distance from the mains to the weight placement. So that's 1200 millimeters. So on this particular plane, that might be somewhere out here. Now we're actually going to put the weight way out here in the nose if we need any. But all that measurement's doing is specifically telling you how much. So if you were to put 2,000 millimeters, you're going to need less weight than 1,000 millimeters because the distance further out. Okay, and a standard setup like this with a single nose and rear is bicycle. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now what do is I go into the weight setting. Okay, so I'm going to tear our scales, which my scales generally always come out as 0. So those are zeroed. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the plane put on the scales. We're going to do the weight first, and then we'll hit the CG button and see how we're making out. Now, one other quick little thing I forgot to mention was, if you are going to be putting something for one of the struts to sit on, obviously you want to put that on and then zero the scales. So I've already done that. And if I take that off, it's 0.05 pounds. Okay, so that's just something to think about. Also, at this point, the measurements don't matter anymore. So if you want to take your plane and move it around, you don't need to be putting the scales in the same spot, because that's all based on your measurements from your plane. All right, guys, so here's our initial weight. Shows you all the measurements there. Now, 56.5 pounds. We've got the elevators are on, the wings are on, the wingtip missiles are on, but we've got no pilots, no nose cone, no no real weight in the nose. We do have 2 temporary lipos up here just to kind of check and see, but we do have to add the pilots in there as well too. But that's the initial weight. Now what we do is we go to CG, and we are tail heavy. We need to add 1.4 pounds at the correction point. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pilots in first of all, see what happens with that, and I'll come back to you guys. All right, guys, we are all set up here. So we've got the pilots laying in there. Now, obviously, they're missing their helmet and stuff like that, but that's pretty minor little things on a plane like this. So pilots are there. Nose cone is engaged. Now, I actually left this out, the actual structure, because right now the turbine batteries are in here. The receiver batteries, 2 lipos, are just random lipos that I have, not the ones we're using, but it'll give us an idea, are sitting right here. And we've got just the nose cone attached. And we are tail heavy by 1/4 pound, so 100 grams. Now, we can do a couple things here. I'll take this nose cone off. So we've got a lot of fine adjustments we can make here. First thing we could do is we could eliminate a bunch of this wiring from the life batteries for the turbine. But we could also, like this is the batteries that we're using here for testing, so it's going to add a bit more weight for us anyways, like when we go to a 5,000 milliamp battery. But the option we have is we can actually slide these guys back, the turbine batteries. We'll put our temporary receiver batteries right there. Okay, now without the nose cone installed, so we've got the turbine batteries slid back to about here is the front of the battery. We've got the nose structure cone on, and no actual nose cone on, and we are really darn close. So 0.13 pounds tail heavy. Now if we put the cone on, so it's just roughly put into place, so we are 0.25 pounds nose heavy. All right, guys, so I think the best course of action, because we want the lipos to be accessible, is we want to try and fit them on the nose cone here, the structure cone. So what I've done is I've pushed the turbine batteries all the way back to the former here, which will work good, I hope. Put the nose cone structure on, and then we're going to put our lipos in here, put the nose cone back on, and see how things work out. I mean, obviously we want to take those batteries out for charging. We don't want to have them buried in the in this area here. I mean, we could build a slide-in structure or something, but the problem with that is then we'd be adding more weight. So let's see how this all balances out. All right, guys, so with what I just explained, turbine batteries moved back, lipos in the nose, the structure cone in the nose, and the nose cone on. We are nose heavy by 0.07 pounds, which is really, really close. Now the ordnance is not going to affect this plane, and the reason for that is the drop tanks and everything are basically right on the CG point. Okay, so there's a CG point. Center of the drop tank is right here. The missile, same kind of thing. So that's the CG of the F-18, guys. Works out perfect. Very, very happy that that all worked out. Yeah, it's awesome. And our last thing that I didn't show you guys is the final weight. So without fuel, UATs are full. With the smoke system installed, we are at 58.1.2 pounds. Awesome. I think that worked out good. So Skymaster actually has a video up, I think, on their, if you go to their main site, they've got a link to the YouTube video with all the different surface configurations and stuff. So, but we'll be setting that up kind of as a final step. So plane's really, really close, just the final details. Oh yeah, we got to dress the pilots and put them in the cockpit as well, which is sitting there. So just a bunch of fine little details. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with you guys because the rest of the stuff is just simple little things. But as I complete it, I'll show you the final details. Guys, quick little update on a little bit of progress here. So this is where we're going to have one of the receivers mounted. We've got the this antenna pointed up on the canopy system there. Just in case you're wondering, it's not this part of the antenna that does anything. It's the last inch, basically, or inch and a little bit. So the bend in this doesn't matter. And then this antenna is going to be just mounted in the cockpit going forward. And then we've got this horizontal tube for one of our other antennas, and then our other one is going to be mounted at an angle like that. So we'll have all the different axes covered. So that part's done. The wing is really, really close. I've got all the pieces mounted, all the cover plates on. Just glued these hard points on tonight. And now that they're dry, I'm just getting ready to mount the covers. We've got a little bit of touch up here to do on the wing. When I was sanding this one out, I came through with my Dremel in 2 spots, so I'm just filling that and getting that that covered up. But the wing is really, really close. All right, guys, a sad week has turned into a happy day. I have been missing my trusty bent screwdriver for about a week. And I was just working on the front part of the plane, putting the batteries in there, and I found it. It was sitting on the tray inside the fuselage. So I am happy. Ha! All right, so we got the batteries mounted in there. They are Velcroed in place. And then I've got a piece of foam on top just to give pressure. But those batteries aren't going anywhere. I use the super heavy duty Velcro, and they are stuck. So those are done. All right, guys, the structure cone's on. We'll deal with all the battery leads when we get our lipos to put on here. Now, fitting the nose cone on is pretty straightforward. Basically, you got to make sure that your screws are inserted. Now, they do have screw holes already put in here, but they're not exactly in great spots. Like the screw hole's actually lined up with the middle of the plate there. So I moved the screw holes. You will need to do a little bit of sanding on the edge there for the cone to fit on. And the other thing to keep in mind is there might be some filler just laid over the edge, so you got to clean up the filler. I just took a tiny little Zona saw and just cleaned up the edge all the way around. If you don't do that, then the nose cone doesn't fit on very well. And now, hopefully I can do this with one hand. The nose cone fits on, no problem, and it's nice and solid, and works good. All right, guys, we are done, with the exception of 2 things. We're still waiting on the actual batteries that we ordered for the front end, and we are waiting on, of course, the King Tech turbine that was sent back because of the issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through all the different systems as if we have gone to the field and the plane's been assembled and we're getting it ready to fly. And then I'll show you guys all the different mixes and everything on the plane. So radio's on. We'll flip the power on. We've aired it up already. So yeah, we'll start off with the cockpit. So I've shown this in the previous video, but cockpit only works with gear down, so as soon as I flick gear up, the cockpit will close, but I'll close the cockpit. And then Katie, if you can grab a close-up here. So we have one receiver up top here, so it's completely open, not restricted by anything, and then another one's buried inside on the side of the airplane. Now cockpit's going to open. We've got the pilots all dressed up thanks to my lovely daughters. That was the one contribution, was they dressed all the pilots up. So going to the front end here, when we get our 2 batteries, the 2 lipos that we're going to use for the receiver, we're going to make just a Velcro system to hold it in place. But we've got everything color-coded, so we've got turbine number 2, and the battery for turbine number 2. The balance leads color-coded as well too, so that's pretty straightforward. And then on the other side, we've got yellow for turbine number 1. Now those, of course, could be interchanged, but just so when we're charging these, we know what's what. And then the leads for the primary batteries are just going to be unmarked. So fairly straightforward. Going through all the different systems. So the air brake, right now it's on the left slider, so right here. And we've got basically the full range of motion on it. And we may end up turning that down because they don't list any specific amounts in the manual. So that's full right now, but that's half travel. So we'll have to play with it. The owner of the plane will have to play with it to see what works best, and then we'll just limit the amount of travel after that. So, but that's the air brake. So we've cleaned up and finished our startup section. So of course, when we're flying this plane, the only thing we need to do is take off this hatch. We've got our fuel input, our smoke input, the smoke valve, the 2 fuel valves, which go to the appropriate engine. And we've got our GSU plugs on both sides for each engine as well too. And then the actual GSU screens can just sit right here. I'm not a fan of keeping them in the airplane permanently, so I didn't put any Velcro or anything there. And we've got the primary on and off, and then the air fill valve.
And some caulking.
As my wife pointed out, the caulking there is just for weight right now, to simulate the engine weight. Alright guys, so we'll do a gear check with it. We've already done this in previous videos, but as a final check, we'll get it done. Gear up. Cockpit closed because cockpit's not allowed to be open when gear's up. And then now we'll drop the landing gear. And there we go. Cockpit opens. Alright guys, so here's our surfaces and the way we've got it all programmed. So we've got elevator movement, and we do have aileron built in with tailerons. Now when you watch the Skymaster video, you'll see that they have way more taileron movement than we've got, but I've actually increased it from where the owner had the previous plane set to on the programming. So it's kind of at the midway point, but that's where it's set. So that's the way we've got the tail programmed. We've got first stage flaps, which of course is the full flap, so ailerons go down along with the leading edge flaps. Taileron still works along with ailerons, and then we've got full flap, and the rudders go in as well too on full flap and still work. So flaps off, full flaps on. And we've programmed a little bit of elevator in there. The F-18s, when you go to full flaps, they drop the nose because the surfaces are so far back. So you do need to add up elevator on full flaps, and we do have a bit of tail working in there as well too. So we basically have programmed this all like Skymaster suggests. One last little final touch, guys, is I've put the channel layout just inside the hatch there, just so we have reference to it. The radio references it all, but then it's at least laid out. All right, guys, so a couple closing remarks here about the Skymaster F-18 build. Number one, the manual was not good. It shows you the gist of the layout. If you have any experience building, you should be able to get through it. But it's definitely not a step-by-step manual that explains everything you need to do. All right, guys, one of the common questions that I get all the time and that I've gotten specifically about this plane was how many hours did it take to put this thing together? How many hours does it take to build a plane like this? So my total hour count on this particular plane up until right now is 167 hours. It's a lot of time. It's just a lot of figuring out. Now that time does include some video time as well too, so like filming videos and setting up and things like that. So if I wasn't videoing, probably maybe 140 hours, 150 hours, something like that. So but yeah, that's what we're at, 167 hours. You know, there's a lot to do on this aircraft, a lot of little details to deal with. Now if you were to make it way more scale, of course that time would increase a lot. You know, if I was to go ahead and weather this plane, you know, you're talking about another 15-20 hours in weathering time. So that is it, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this build video. I'll throw a link right here to the entire build video, so if you happen to come across this video by itself and you've watched it till the very end, there is like 18 or 19 videos before this one, so check that link out. There's also a link in the description below. If you guys have any questions, make sure you list them below. You can shoot me an email as well too. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. We will see you in the next build, guys. Thanks so much.